it all starts with good parents, good family values, right? And they gave me enough of a leash to tether me to a pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, but they also had a long enough leash so that I was able to make, significant quantity of mistakes over time. And that honestly is probably the best way to learn. I thrive in bear markets. I look forward to pain. I look forward to being able to separate from everyone else, because it's really weaknesses in psychology that harm investors. And here, bring forward today, I think it's perhaps the weakest humanity's ever been. I think what dialed me into the metaphysical and spiritual side is definitely a combination of surfing and yoga. Be gentle and be kind, but be a warrior. Know that you're powerful. Know that you're free and you have free will. And don't let, for men, anybody but your wife, tell you what to do. And for everyone else, just rebel against tyranny, because as the American forefathers said, rebellion and tyranny is obedience to God.
All right, we're live. Hello and welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. Thanks for being with me. I'm Efrat, and today I have the pleasure of having Christopher Sullivan. Hey, Chris.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being with me. I'm super stoked and excited about this one because, and I'll share why. I have discovered Chris only a few weeks ago. And I'll tell you when. It was I watched a recording of your panel at the Bitcoin Naples Day in Florida. And I'm watching it on the big screen, sitting on my couch, like having the best time. And then you start talking, and Paul, which I know Paul, I've met him and I love him. And I didn't know John either. And John is also,
John, yeah.
Oh yeah, he's great. And you start talking and I go, there's another one, another ice bucket, another sledgehammer on their heads. He's like truth bombs one after the other, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, I got to talk to that guy. So I reached out. I looked you up. You're not on Twitter, so I found you on LinkedIn, and I wrote straight away, I have to have you on the podcast. And people know. And I'm sorry in advance for everyone that asks to be on my podcast, because there are many people like that, especially after I interviewed Michael Saylor. Everyone wanted to be on.
Well, Southern manners prevent me from that sort of megalomania, and I'm very into karma, serendipity, etc. And like,
exactly,
it would defeat the purpose of actually trying to give wisdom and truth and share that with you. If, hey, can I get on your podcast and promote myself, or I don't have anything to promote? I have truth to promote. That's it.
Right. And yes, I agree with you. I'm the same. And I love when it happens that way. Anyway, I normally say no to a lot of people, or just say not now, because I do have a very long waiting list. And also I have a lot of episodes that I've already recorded that I'm putting out there. So it takes me time. And with you, it was like dropping pen. I don't care. I just have to talk to you.
There's no pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. No, I just feel that we have so much to talk about. And after watching that great panel, which, by the way, I will put a link to that panel in the show notes because it was such a great one. And I encourage everyone to go watch it. But I just felt like I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to ask you more stuff. I wanted to develop some of those ideas with you, some of the things that you've said there. And then I went on to watch some of your other stuff. So I watched you with Robert Breedlove, which was already on my podcast as well. I love Robert. And that was so different. It was so different. But also I watched you with Gary Cardone. And that was also very different and very good, very different. So I love how you bring out different sides of you, depending on the audience, depending on the conversation. And I think in this specific conversation now, we're going to touch on like where those things meet, somewhere between your profession and your love for numbers, finance, and the real world, to the metaphysical world and spirituality and your vision in life and what guides you.
Well, invert or change. In my view, is that that's the real.
I agree. Oh,
The
yeah, sure. I
we
called
are,
it real. I'm sorry.
yeah,
My bad.
the metaphysical, the spiritual,
I agree.
the
I agree.
frequency
I meant
dimensions.
the earthy
Right.
experience.
It's like, or I kind of separate it from the construct to natural law and order. Like those are the human construct is one thing, and then the natural order supersedes that. And you can call there's many different words, matrix versus spirituality or metaphysical. It doesn't really matter because it's all
Yep.
just sequences of math that
Yep.
conform to sacred geometry and Fibonacci. So they all do interweave, and that's very brilliant of you to put those together. And I'm humbled that you recognize that I am trying to add value from any vector that I can through my experience, both as a asset manager, portfolio manager, and as a human being. Because I've lived a lot of life in 43 years.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open-source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code Efrat. Normally what I do when I start is I introduce my guests to my audience because they may not know you. Like I didn't.
Oh, best they don't.
So I want to tell them, wait a sec. I want to tell them that Chris is a portfolio manager and co-founder of, let's see if I get it right, Hyperion Decimus.
Perfect. Yes.
Did I? Okay. One of the first liquid quantitative asset managers in digital assets. He's a charter market technician, avid surfer, musician, and yogi, proud father and husband. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey and what got you to today in this reincarnation.
Yeah, I'm trying to not have that happen again, right? That's the goal, is to ascend.
I'm with you, yeah.
People that aren't ready to
I don't
hear
want to
that
come
are
back.
really going to dismiss that. Wait, the moon is what? So I just, it all starts with kind of good parents, good family values, right? And they gave me enough of a leash to tether me to a pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, but they also had a long enough leash so that I was able to make, significant quantity of mistakes over time. And that honestly is probably the best way to learn, whether it's in trading or it's in relationships or it's in sports, right? Like it transcends kind of all of humanity to learn from making mistakes. And you don't really learn from winning, right? And through that, I actually, with respect to markets, I thrive in bear markets. I look forward to pain. I look forward to being able to separate from everyone else, because it's really weaknesses in psychology that harm investors. And here, bring forward today, I think it's perhaps the weakest humanity's ever been psychologically, or at least the most vulnerable. Might be a more nice,
Right.
kind way of saying it. Because we've been gaslit and propagandized for at least a few hundred years, if not a few thousand, and the magnitude of it through technological advancements, and then the absence of technological advancements that we've had 150, 170 years ago has really made us more susceptible.
Yeah.
But I think what dialed me into the metaphysical and spiritual side is definitely a combination of surfing and yoga. Like those practices, when you understand what the addiction side of surfing is, and that your waves have amplitudes, which is the distance between each peak, and then they have a frequency, right? It's transformation of energy from the atmosphere onto the surface of the ocean. And there's an equal distance of wave above the water and below the water. And how the bottom contour shapes the wave as it approaches shore is all this beautiful physics and geometry. Then when you catch a wave, what you have to do is match the speed of it. And what my translation of the sort of mindlessness and then the linking with energy is that you catch up to the frequency of the wave and become one with it. And there's something so ethereal and spiritual about it. That's why people tell you, like, there are people who surf and then there are surfers. And that's a huge distinction.
Right.
And through knowing music, the frequency translation was really simple. I'm a pretty decent musician and play a lot of instruments. So knowing your circle of this modalities and tonalities, and then the shapes that they produce, and both visually and in, like, I'm sure you've seen the videos of the sand where certain frequencies make these beautiful.
Oh, sure. The
Or
way sound influences water and particles and everything. Yeah.
it's everything, right?
Everything,
There's
of course.
information in sound, there's feeling in sound. A lot of how because trees are sentient, a lot of how they communicate is with sound, and they can change it, their tonality of that frequency based on your own emotions. It's really, really epic, the beauty of nature. So then you get into yoga, which honestly I did to pick up girls when I was younger. That was my first. And some people are going to like that or not like it, but that is the humble truth. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm recovering faster. It almost opens your chakras further to take in more information. And so I think that was both humbling, and then the physicality of it was great. Then so you read Diary of a Yogi, and then I got way into Bikram, and that brings you through all this pathway of education that's just not brought forward in both Eastern and Western education systems. I mean, that's probably one of the main problems when you get below the central banks, is that we're not even being taught the beauty of humanity for the last, call it 6,000 years of history. And then, so that goes to college, where I did study history, and then had a professor who was like, nope, what you're taught here in high school is not right. It's propaganda. Rockefellers did it, this, that, the other. Here, read this. And it was like the opposite of what.
Oh, wow. That sounds like an unusual professor.
Yeah, nowadays it's very hard to find people like that. He's since passed away.
Right.
I think he was 76 in 2003 to 2005, where I was studying under him. But it was amazing. And then that brought me down a path of, okay, how do you put the classics, the Stoics, the history of histories, like a Herodotus, a Plato, a Cicero, and bring them forward to really what I think is the problem. Like, what I can kind of siphon upwards towards is that without the ability to conjure money, whether you call it usury, whether you call it Western central banking, or you call it cabal, whatever the word is you want to use, very similar to, there's various names for extraterrestrials, right? They could be Anunnaki, they could be demons, they could be Nephilim, right? They're words for the same thing, different words for the same thing, right? That's how
I think that you're the first person that said the word Anunnaki on my podcast.
Dude, it's all or nothing now. This is our job. So again, I have no fear. I'm very blessed with wife and kids, good business, great business partners, great clients. So I have only joy and the attempt to share wisdom. So how anybody critiques it, I care less. I'm not on social media because I am.
No, keep going. My stage is yours. This is perfect.
Okay, Anunnaki. That's a whole different.
Anyway, to interrupt you there, it was just so good.
As you're going down pathways of enlightenment or chasing wisdom or truth, you then kind of back away and appraise the information. Well, you might say Anunnaki, they say the Greys, somebody says Nephilim, and somebody says Hermes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just potentially, I'm not saying you can definitively say this, but that's potentially just a different human experience of the same thing.
Right.
Whether it's corporeal or tangible, we can argue or debate later.
Right.
It doesn't really matter, because even if it's not, if you're experiencing that way, it's still reality to you.
Right. That's great. You just you make me think about Graham Hancock and his work.
Yeah, he's
right, and like the ancient apocalypse, and so you see all these evidence for ancient civilization and various cultures describing very similar phenomena and very similar characters in history.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of weaves the thread between them and shows you how possibly they could be the same. Like, everyone's talking about the same kind of phenomena or the same kind of characters, and they're just each describing it in their own local flavor. And no one knows anyway, and it's hard to tell whether. Yeah, so you just reminded me of that.
And then what is knowing? I mean, you can go down the Descartes path,
right? Exactly.
And then, or Immanuel Kant. Like it's really important to expose yourselves to the classics, because we're Carl Jung, the Austrian economist, because I couldn't make any sense of what's going on or has gone on if I didn't have all of the tools that people were so kind to share with us by writing them down. And then you get conscious of the fact that so much of history was destroyed on purpose.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking, because how are we supposed to frame evolution of our thought process, our culture, our economies, our communities, if we don't have the data and the stories of the past? Like, one thing that's being lost that really I'm conscious of and is sad now is like all of these beautiful cultures that have the ones you were citing, whether it's Mayan or it's Incan, or it's various, thousands of tribes in Amazon, or it's different sects of the Vikings, right, from a century and a half ago. All of these wonderful ways of viewing the world, a lot of it kind of homeopathic, naturopathic, right? People would call it pagan, but I'm not really looking at it through that lens. And there's never not something you can't learn from it. And so whitewashing it and or eliminating it or gaslighting people that it didn't even happen, I don't really want to dive into the agenda behind that, but it's just very frustrating because there's so many beautiful cultures all over the planet. My favorite's actually Pacific Islander, but I'm biased because of surfing. Like the Maori, I think those people they're just my favorite. So
have you spent time there?
Yeah, Tahiti, Fiji, Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a special culture that, and same with like Aborigines, Australia. That it's just dwindling so quickly that, and same with Nordic culture, like that's dwindling. That's less numbers than there were 50 years ago. That I was like, how do we preserve that? Is one of the things I'm thinking about, because epigenetics is a huge thing, and you don't have to be like an authoritarian megalomaniac person to go, hey, maybe we should make sure some of these bloodlines are preserved. So that we have diversity of genealogy, so that the cultures of those genealogies live on to help us learn from one another. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm curious about that fine line between, genetic modifications and transhumanism to epigenetics.
That's what they're fighting against. They're fighting against the natural epigenetics, and they want to debase us they want to really separate the soul from the mechanical machine, because we are electrical beings, right? And that's where the transhumanist thing comes out. It's removing the God essence from each of our bodies, essentially.
Yeah. And by the way, if you can get closer to the microphone, that would be great.
Yeah.
Or have it closer to you. Yeah. We already touched on it, so let's dive for a second. So I think that what we're seeing now, and I am quite surprised, to be honest with you, that this is happening so fast. What we're seeing now with the rise of all the technocrats around Trump, and this is just the US, but you have these seeds all around the world that will now rise up thanks to the to the backing of the US, and they will push forward the singularity agenda, the transhumanism, the fact that we are reaching that point in humanity where it's inevitable that machines and humans will merge to some extent, and they will normalize it more and more. I mean, they have been normalizing it already for the past, I think, almost 15-20 years, but now it's like on steroids.
Yeah, you could argue it was when they started using anything orthopedic, right?
Right.
Appendages.
But yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, I didn't think about that.
That's when they started desensitizing. Oh, we're going to put machines or components or machinery inside of your body. And so that's where it's is desensitizing it.
So you even see, that's a interesting question. Do you even see like a pacemaker as a...
Yeah, I have very like rigid rules on that most people will not like to hear. But because I'm very set.
You're like a zero intervention in the human body?
Yeah. You should see my medical director. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And why do you think that there is no good cause to interfere with biology?
It's just my view from my...
Yeah,
it's good is a relative term and subjective term.
Yeah,
right?
For you.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your...
No, I don't view it as good or bad. I'm just not doing it. I don't want to have any intrusion into nature, basically, in my... And this is why, stop drinking, stop taking, try to limit or reduce anything that's going to harm any aspect of how your mitochondria work, how your brain works. Unfortunately, we're getting sprayed constantly from every angle that it's very hard to continually detox from that. But, it's just my view. I don't want, if you're meant to go, you're meant to go. And because I'm not afraid to go, like, just transition. It's just a transition. Why 100%. Augment it?
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. I'm like you, and in fact, I think I was always like you, but I never gave it the time of day to actually think about it and make a conscious decision because I was so normie for so many years and didn't stop to think about it until COVID came and woke me up. And then I started looking at everything in my life, everything. So you were asking me before.
So yeah, what, if you don't mind me asking you some questions?
Sure.
Because a lot of people do cite that as the pathway split towards awakening. Can you highlight or maybe itemize what snapped it and make you kind of arise out of what was already internal to you?
Yeah. I think it was a combination of so many people telling me what to do so many times in such a short period of time, being certain that they can command me to do so many things in such a short period of time, including family, friends, government. Like, it came from everywhere. And I think that pressure, I never liked to be told what to do anyway, right? But then when it came all like in an orchestrated campaign and bombarded me, that plus a combination of being a marketeer and watching normie television and seeing as a PR communications marketing person, seeing the orchestrated campaign that was just running across the world with the same messaging points, with the same call to action for everyone. I, like, as a marketeer, it was like, flashing lights. What's happening here? Why are they all doing the same thing, saying the same thing, pushing people to do the same thing? There is a marketing campaign in act. Now I have to figure out why. So it was that, and there was the pressure, the social pressure together. I think it popped me like popcorn. It was like, okay, stop everything, start researching what's going on here.
And that, I think that just is really a turning point for everyone, is the magnitude. Yeah. But do you think, because it's not like these forces weren't in control before, do you think it was pure hubris that they allowed the magnitude to permeate so globally? Or do you think they just didn't care because they have all the control and power? Because anybody could see, wait, they're saying in Phoenix, Arizona, the same exact lines they're saying in New Zealand or Israel or Russia. Or, wait, how are they the exact same lines said in the exact same tonality? Yeah. Right?
I think it's just the same people. Yeah, conscious wise, I think that they reached the hubris point where they started, they took it too far. And they were so sure of themselves and their powers that they thought they could do anything, and it will flow, it will go, everything will be accepted. They reached such a level of complacency not giving a fuck about people,
Yeah.
that they just pushed it too far, and it made too many people wake up, like me. Like, I would probably not wake up if it was not that sophisticated and that orchestrated and that synchronized between everyone. And maybe I would have, because this was really exaggerated, but it was, I think it's hubris. Yes. I think
And
it's
they're getting it from every angle now. It's amazing.
oh yeah, now it's
people from the
back at
CDC yesterday. I mean, and then did that awakening? Do you mind if I continue asking you?
Keep going.
Because I know you mentioned Miss Dolores Cannon, who everybody who knows who that is should come. I think it's in Virginia Beach.
Most people don't know who she is.
Well, but there's so, like, Edward Casey and her are part of the stopping points along the road to enlightenment, right? And there are venues and same thing. We have Bitcoin conferences, right? Or there's places to go to learn this kind of stuff. And I'm curious, did you know about her beforehand, or this was okay? The globalist triggered your, hey, you guys are evil sons of guns. I'm looking into everything. So when did you get to that? Because that's
so my spiritual awakening started very shortly after my informational awakening, let's call it that way. I think a few months later, I started, like, a good friend of mine asked me, do you know what the third, fourth, fifth dimension is? Have you heard of that? And I'm like, no, teach me. I was in such a sponge mode that I just wanted to know everything, learn everything. I was open to everything. I still am. It never stopped since it started 5 years ago. And I was like, teach me anything that someone comes to me and tells me, have you heard of this? Do you know about that? I'm like, no, hit me up. Like, and then I use my discernment. Does it feel right or wrong? Or can I connect it with other things? Can I use this? Is it good for me? Do I leave it aside? Or do I just hold it as a point of information so that I can then work with it later if I need to? So she said that, and then, she gave me information, and I started going down the spirituality rabbit hole. It's not a rabbit hole, it's like a hole. It's a beautiful world.
Oh, it's awesome.
And and I didn't stop since. And I was exposed to more and more very smart people, spiritual teachers, and channelers, and people who channel extraterrestrials, and all kinds of like people like Barbara Marciniak, and obviously Lori Ladd and Elizabeth April. They're like the more modern ones, but also the good old like the OGs.
there are
at that time.
And just for your audience, because a lot of people aren't aware of this, there's a network that you can get on an app or on your smart TV called Gaia, that has archived quite a bit of this over the last few decades, and it has a range of literally physical yoga workouts to seeing people channel real time, and everything in between. There's some great history. God, he's an Irish guy who is kind of like Graham Hancock. I forget his name. He's one of my favorite guys on Gaia. Man, he's going to be mad I forgot his name. But anyways, it's a wonderful education platform if you're scratching the surface on it.
If you want to learn more and get access to those people and their content, definitely you can do it there, or you can just start buying books. Or
you have to go to the books too, because the books are
Dolores, I mentioned her because when I got to her after like a year or two down my journey, and the funny thing was that when I was I think I was 34, 35, and my grandfather passed away. That was 10 years ago, more. Yeah, I was probably 33 back then. I'm almost 45. I sat down with my psychologist at the time. I used to go to a psychologist once every 2 weeks for like a good 2 or 3 years. And she was awesome. Like, she was not your typical psychologist, because I could speak to her about everything and anything, and she came up with all these first of all, she spoke, and it wasn't just like me talking, and she gave me some practical advice, but also she gave me some advice a bit similar to your history professor. She was like different, a bit out of the box kind of psychologist. And so when I told her about some of the questions I have about my grandfather and death, and my grandma and my grandfather, and they're both like deciding to leave this earth whenever they did, and so on, and she told me, you know what, there's a book you should read. And she gave me that book by Dr. Brian Weiss, if you've heard of him. It's called I'm translating from Hebrew, Lessons and Roots in Time, something like that. And it talks about reincarnations. He was doing hypnotherapy to he's a psychiatrist that was doing hypnotherapy to his to some of his patients, that there was nothing else that he could do to help them. So he was trying that, and by mistake he took them back to previous reincarnations, helped them resolve some of the issues they had in previous life, and when he brought them back, the stuff that they were dealing with, and this was like really hard shit, it went away, like it completely disappeared. And so she gave me that book, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That is that real? Like there is such a thing as reincarnations? And she got me exposed to that already 10 or 12 years ago, but I never, and I did read a few books of his, but I never took it forward too much because I was still busy.
That gave you the pathway, right? Like
Right.
Subconsciously, because the same thing. I was trying to be a Zen surfer, and then I was into yoga and music. That was teeing it up to be able to go through.
Exactly. And that's why I believe that everything we do in life has a purpose and a timing, and it's all very accurate to prepare us for what's coming. And so 12 years onwards, when I saw Dolores Cannon for the first time and listened to her, everything she said just made so much sense, clicked for sure. Yeah, because that's what she does. She does like hypnotherapy to people, taking them back to past lives, and she calls it past life regressions, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's insane. And she doesn't even call herself a therapist. She calls herself a journalist, because she views her role as someone who is collecting data and information from all these therapies that she's doing, and then crossing the information, cross-referencing the information from all patients, getting similar experiences and similar stories. And that validates for her that these things are happening, or they're probably closer to the truth than we think.
Truth is what you make of it, right? I'm not saying it's subjective, but okay, if we'll walk through like the quantitative way to use deductive reasoning. Okay, if the rolling consensus is that epigenetics, which passes through your Y chromosome, carries about 20 generations or / lifetimes of DNA memory in it, well, then okay, we're going to then call that, in the regression sense, we're going to be able to go back through your 20 reincarnations and find trauma within your bloodline. Maybe you're not your soul exactly, but either way, as we say in music, that's good enough for rock and roll to have a working premise and a working thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually goes right in the direction of logic and reason based on the science that we have. And that's what I really dislike about a lot of the COVID BS is that they tried to oversell you we're science, which is obviously anti-scientific to say that, when the spirituality and scientific actually mirror each other, because you can't have one without the other.
Okay, listen.
One doesn't oppose the other.
Oh, sure. 100%. I have to send you to watch this. Okay, I'm going to send you the link after we finish.
Do it.
And you have to go watch this amazing interview. I've watched several interviews of his already with a wonderful human called Federico Fagin. He's the inventor of the CPU and a physicist. And he's researching quantum. And this is going to blow your mind. It's all about consciousness and science. So he's like, that's what he does. Like, he's a physicist. and
We
he's
have a device in my office that's using quantum entanglement inside the box right now. What it
amazing.
does is it blocks EMF. You want me to go grab it? I can go grab it and
Oh
show it.
yes,
All right,
please,
give me
please
one
bring
second.
it.
This is hilarious. Hold on. The designer's going to kill me, but might as well educate people. So
I've
this is
seen this once. Yeah, go on. Tell me about it.
Leela Q, Leela Q.
Yeah.
And how we came about, like, because my wife's, her approach was a different angle than mine, but through like transcendental NED type stuff is where she came in. But we're conscious that
Near death experience? Is it okay?
We're conscious that we're bombarded with radiation, right? You can't, I mean, people need to look up Sabrina Walls, just find everything she does.
Oh boy.
And she's kind of the most transparent about, there's plenty of people before her, right, that exposed this in the 90s, but currently if you can get some of her information, she'll turn you on real quick. But
Internet of Bodies.
Correct. And we've got a biofield, blah, blah, blah. So with young kids, that became, okay, not just about us. So we got into Faraday technology, but that only does a little bit. This son of a gun. And there's many different products I highly recommend. And then I'm wearing Dr. Seam's Art Crystal, which I highly recommend too.
Uh-huh. That's the only thing I have for blocking EMF. I have a few of them spread around the house.
Yeah, and their crystals are conscious and sentient too, which is crazy. Anywho, not crazy, beautiful, I guess is the right word. This has like a 300-yard radius blocking, but what's inside of here is quantum entanglement right in front of us. It's radical. It's inside these rare earth minerals, and they effectively like imprint the technology into the metal. And you can even put your cell phone in it, and it reverses the polarity like this. Do it 30 seconds because it'll blow up. I swear. Look, go on the site. There's tons of research supporting it.
Yeah.
We've got multiple sizes of these.
Uh-huh.
It can heal organs.
And you put them, really? And you put them all over?
Yeah, house, office. We have cards in the.
Okay, later you're gonna send me the link.
It's so epic. And even if it's placebo, right? Assuming we're completely full of it, your belief that it's working is enough for it to work. Like that's what it's so powerful with the mind body. But I'm happy to. I'll share you all those links. But I will say the whatever deep state globalist Kabbalists, they're after the manufacturing of this.
Of course, they would be after anything that is like that. If we have time in the end, I'll show you a quick video of this startup in the US that someone showed me yesterday that is using Internet of Bodies to surveil people and to kind of forecast or predict the next disaster or crime that will happen and give that data to the law enforcement. It's quite wild.
The Tom Cruise Minority Report, or what was that movie
it
called?
sounds like it, but it's called. I saved it. It's open here.
And no one's trying to stop that.
Oh no, it's called centralcommand.com. What do you mean stop that? It's the agencies want to use that. They use that.
Yeah, but they technically work for us. Yeah, I don't worry so much about that anymore.
Who works for us?
Technically, all of the bureaucrats, and I mean, clearly on paper they do. I'll back that up. So forgive me.
Sorry, I mean, your
opinion. I'm still like, wait, the Constitution? No, they don't listen to that. But there's way more of us that we're going to overwhelm. We are overwhelming them.
I mean, I'm not pessimistic. Don't get me wrong. I am very optimistic about life and about humanity, and I do believe that good people exist everywhere in every system, and with them we can make a change.
I would argue almost everyone is good. It's really hard to be evil.
Right. I think where people are at is not that they're bad, it's that they're brainwashed.
Yeah, I mean,
they may be good at heart, but they'll be so brainwashed that they would do stuff that are bad, like they would do bad things
Well,
without understanding that they're bad.
of course you're right. Look at, okay, we had all these different bankers wars, right, from all the different empires for how many thousands of years, and then wait, neighbors in Europe are going to kill each other like little boys. Those 18, 19-year-old boys they had nothing to do with the political agendas of their masters, right? It's still going on now, where young men in Ukraine and Russia are being convinced to kill each other when they're not even 2% different genealogy. Everybody just wants a good meal, a good life, and nobody deviates from that but a few percentage points. And somehow there's between 1 and 2 million boys that have died over what?
No, that's horrible. I know.
And so that's just a really radical example of what you just said.
For sure. Yeah, I live in such a war zone. I know. I experience it here all the time. The young soldiers that are dying, but obviously my neighbors here, 30,000 or so or more of them, including children and women. And for what? That's one of the reasons
Agendas of evil men is my answer.
Yeah, and I sent my son away from here for that.
Yeah.
I don't want him to live here. I don't want him to go to the army. That's why.
The only battle that's worth fighting is freedom versus tyranny.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. And that's the battle we're in. And we know who the tyrants are. We know what agencies and bureaucracies and NGOs they all have. And one part needs to be combating it with consciousness and truth and love, and the other needs to be ready for physicality.
Mm.
The good news is they are athletes. They're not like, that overwhelming in terms of what physical force they could put on us. Look at the EU. It's pathetic. These people are screaming about Elon telling the truth. And like, that's now, okay, it's racist. It's non-constitutional. It's threatening. Oh, come on. And I think that's also part and parcel to hopefully emboldening our European brothers and sisters into reacting like America. Like, America's done with it. It's really a breath of fresh air.
That's really good to see.
Permanently done with it. They're never going to get a hold of this place again.
I hope so. I hope this is going to be.
There's too many. There's 82 million of us with lots of guns.
You're lucky you have the Second Amendment for sure. I mean, lucky. It's not luck. It's
right. It's every person's right.
Designed. Yeah, you have a role, and that's it.
Well, it's just we're not going to take it anymore, and just that needs to get to everywhere. UK, Israel, Russia, China. I mean, China. Geez, those poor people too. That everybody just needs to be on the same side. No person from Israel or China. We're not enemies with our constituent people. That's all up at this level, and people need to just understand that.
Oh, yeah. They're so gaslit to believe that, and they're so brainwashed to hate. They're propagandized to hate. I see it around me every day, every single day. I hear people talk. I engage with them. I mean, I try to engage as less as possible. But the propaganda is insane how it makes people hate each other and really be convinced that the other is your enemy.
But why doesn't it work on you?
It doesn't touch me. So many things don't touch me. It doesn't touch me because I've completed and I am completing. This is like an ongoing muscle that I have, but I'm completing a lot of my like Dolores says, garbage and baggage, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm making space first of all, for new things, but secondly, I'm making space for peace. I'm making space for others, because I am emptying myself out from my own crap, my own traumas. And I've been doing a lot of trauma work, shadow work, inner work, whatever you want to call it, for the past few years. And already 3 years ago, I think, I've come up and said it to my best friends. I told them, that's it. I feel ready. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I feel like I've reached a point where I am privileged enough to, first of all, financially, economically, I'm fine. Like, I've worked hard for many, many years, and I saved money, and I'm okay. It's not like I'm rich, but I've got enough for me and my son, and I feel like I'm safe and secured. And I have learned a lot. I have done a lot. I've worked really hard the past 20 years. I've gained a lot of experience. I have many, many skills. And I have done the trauma work and the shadow work to enable me to now fully be in service of humanity. Now I'm ready. I can put myself aside and I can start working for you, for the public, for other people. And they were all like, wow, what are you going to do? You're going to quit your job? And I'm like, well, it's going to happen soon enough. And, little did I know, within about a year, less than a year, it happened. Um, because the universe heard me and brought it quicker than I thought. And then I said, okay, this is it. You got what you wanted. You now have a clean slate. What are you going to do? And there was no question. It was clear that I am going to start working for people. I'm going to now become a journalist and have a podcast and talk about everything I see, and go around the world and speak at conferences and expose truths, and just like speak my truth, and expose whatever is hidden and whatever is not being told. And I made this my profession. Yeah.
Commend you, bless you, your courage, wisdom. Not a lot can attain that. And then recognizing, and what, I get this. I'm here as a charitable offering of whatever anybody can add. I can add value to anybody's viewpoint, or hopefully de-stress their situation. That's ideally what I'd like to achieve. But you've been through those cycles of the emotional pain, because when you are faced with, wait a minute, everything I learned was bullshit, it's traumatic.
Oh, sure.
It really is traumatic.
Sure. And there were times where I felt horrible, and I wanted, for sure. I saw the black pill path. I saw it. I didn't want to take it. I mean,
because they want you to take them.
Oh, sure.
You found out
I
about
experienced hardship during that time. Oh, yeah.
It's and me too. I was guilty of it, because you almost want to call out to the world, "Hey, look what Thomas Jefferson said," but it's in a letter, and nobody's taught that, and blah blah blah. There's a million examples, but getting from that point to where you are now is a massive achievement. And then you're also super blessed because you're in a space of gratitude and harmony, which is super good for your son and really any friends and family that are around you. And I'm just very humbled to be around that, because it's not common. Like, me and my wife almost have a little bubble,
right?
And we have a few friends that are at our level, and all trying to achieve it. But even my kids are getting ridiculed for what I've said.
Oh, sure.
At school and at their school, and that's starting to happen. And that's a different type of vector of pain or frustration than I've ever had. Because I never thought me just trying to tell people my experience that it would hurt my kids, because it's supposed to do the opposite, right, in terms of intent. But people are mean. So where you've gotten to,
I'm getting a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's hard.
And my reaction is getting, admittedly, a little shorter in the fuse, but try and continue to evolve so that can sustain at least. But I think that we're going to see quite a bit of disruption, and not everybody's going to make it to the other side. That's just the way it's going to go down.
I agree 100%. And I think that one of the things that is becoming clearer and clearer to me as I go is that, like, the ultimate question of who I am, of why am I here for, what's my purpose, it becomes so clear to me all the time. And the fact that I have chosen to come here as a Israeli Jewish, living in Israel, being very global, speaking another language, having all the skills I have, verbalizing myself from a very, very young age.
Mm-hmm.
This is all, like, it all led me to now. It's such a gift to understand why I am the way I am and why I chose to be here. And having that perspective of, my grandparents being Holocaust survivors, being someone that is not hating any Arab people. I don't hate any. I know that's strange for people to hear, right? As an
Not for me.
Israeli and a Jew. Yeah, I know, but for most people, not for you for sure. But I'm
It's what-
laughing as I
yeah.
think of people's reaction as they listen to me say it. It's like, really, she doesn't, and the automatic pilot goes in their head and they go, what? But there's anti-Semitism over there, and people hate her everywhere, and she's not afraid of Arabs. Da, da, da. It doesn't work, all that bullshit on me. It's not like I am naive and I don't see that there are people with like crazy ideas out there. It exists, but it exists everywhere. And the fact that now it's fashionable to blame it on this group and not that group, it's just a changing fad. And
When the group in charge is the one directing those narratives.
oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And being part of the group that is now everyone hates the Jews and the Zionists and all that. And so much noise, and so much of it is so stupid. And so it's just a waste of time and energy.
People aren't recognizing that this isn't the first time that that's happened, where the and I'm not really qualified to talk about this because I don't come from that background, but I have obviously brothers and sisters who are from that faith and spirituality, and it's not the first instance in history where their grace, their consciousness is weaponized against them.
Oh, sure.
Now, because all of it's a construct, and forgive me, folks, but religion is complete bullshit. Faith is not. That's just the way it goes. Like, whether you call it, the Vatican, the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, it's all the same thing, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Just is. And so that's a divide and conquer construct. We take any book, but I'll pick on the Bible. 65,000 edits between the 5th century and the 14th century.
65,000 edits on the Old Testament?
The entirety. Right. So, there's vast amounts of scripture missing from the Old Testament, which is a 9th or 10th or 12th derivative of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, right? Or the Sumerian, right? Because they're just regurgitating the same story. And like, okay, priests, rabbis, Allahs, whatever, they're all going to get pissed, but I don't really care. Your dance is one of evil and divisiveness, and your rules are inputted in. We already can see natural law. Nature is the expression of the us woo-woo people, we call it source, right? And reality is an expression of source. And you're entitled to believe whatever you want, but religion and politics are the divide and conquer modalities. Period.
I'm with you. And you ask me, so how does it not work on you? That's why it doesn't work on me, because I can see through that bullshit, and because I can identify the next divide and conquer. It's everywhere. It's everywhere and all the time.
Mm-hmm. And what I think my experience from Wall Street and asset management, where that ties into this, is like, folks, do you realize that there's one group conjuring money, making you poor? Do you also recognize that the world is magnificent? We live in abundance, and with current technology, I mean, there's no reason to have any pain, any suffering whatsoever. All of it's a construct, and you just first opt out mentally and spiritually, and then we unite physically and get rid of it. See, it's not that hard. We're almost there.
Chris, listen, we're almost like 50 minutes speaking, and I haven't even asked you one question. Because I prepared so many, and I must. So I don't care. This is going to be a pretty...
I'm very curious. Like, I don't get a huge opportunity to do what you're doing, and so because your viewpoint is so important to my experience and understanding, like it's an honor to get to ask, because I'm just curious. Like, you've got really good energy, really good power. And it didn't come poof, like you had to build on it. And that's a process that most people aren't willing to take. And so I super commend you for that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. And I now know why I wanted to speak to you. I just wanted to spend time with like-minded people and be in the fifth dimension. I love that feeling, you know.
Wait, not the 12th or 13th, only the
Well,
5th?
maybe
Come on,
we're
set the
there.
goal
I don't
higher.
know. How do
Set
you
the goal
count?
higher.
How do you know? Do you have a thermometer thing?
Knowing is, I know nothing, right? But
Yes.
through some transcendental meditation where you're pulling up your energy to your seventh, which is roughly then capped by your biofield, which you could call also a halo, which is really neat how all these things are correlated. I think that it's a combination of temperature, literal
Yes.
vibration, and
Yes.
then peace.
Yes.
And there's a
Yes.
stillness to it. There is
Oh,
a
yeah.
audio quality to it. And I can't pinpoint fourth, fifth, whatever, but I think somewhere where you go, hey, this is about a 20% increase or a 30% increase, and just keep trying to push up that upper boundary.
I love that you are explaining it in physical terms because I this is something I'm contemplating with, and I always love thinking about it. I since the age of 16 until until a few years ago, I used to every now and then I used to faint, and you know, I went to doctors and they said I had nothing, and they were like, maybe it's like the balance between water and salt in your body, and low blood pressure, and you need to do this and that and da da da. And nothing felt right about what they said, and they could never give me an answer that would satisfy me. And I just stayed with the question, the open question of why do I faint and what happens to me when I faint. And as it kept on going,
Mhm.
and I recognized, I started identifying the signals to it, and when it starts to happen, and I started to learn my body, how it handles itself on the way to fainting, because there's a process, although it's short, there is a process, and you can identify what's happening. And so these days, when I know how I feel when I'm in a higher frequency or higher dimension, and I compare that to the experience I had of before fainting, I find many similarities. And I think that when before you faint, your frequency goes up so high that at one point you switch off, like the brain switches off, like a computer
Are you
resets.
viewing that as like a ladder up the Hawkins scale?
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it could be. I don't know, but it just feel like physically, like when you describe that experience, that I think that has some, it has some connection, like the raising of the frequency to get you to a point. If you can handle very high frequency without fainting, that's that's
Well,
mastery. Like
then you're
physically,
one
if
of
your
my
body can handle it. I think in the past my body could not handle it, and today is different.
one of the best modern examples of that, in my humble opinion, is Wim Hof.
Right. The breathing and the cold showers.
That
Okay.
that would it's just superhuman,
Aha.
right? Right, and then
Yeah.
they inject him with like Ebola and stuff, and he does it right in front of the camera. It's so epic to see how powerful, and so much that we're being taught to miss out on of our essence and our
Yeah.
ability. He's just one that's like a Jedi master of it. And I think breathing is certainly one way that I think people really need to get into to raise their frequency, because even if you just get into the pure physicality of hyperoxygenating your blood, well, that detoxes it, that reduces oxidative stress. Okay, so what happens then? You're less sore, you lower inflammation. Okay, what happens then? All of your organs work better. Okay, what happens then? Then you're generally happier and more flexible. And it just, everything works collectively together. And it's a fascinating thing when you can come at it from whatever thing you want. It's still going to be productive and useful.
And my therapy today is doing this. What we're doing now is like talking to people and finding kindred spirits and raising my vibration and frequency. And I love it. This is my therapy. Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions.
One more
Okay.
thing. One more. Okay, here, I'll
No,
propose.
go on, go on.
True or false? Bitcoin is a higher consciousness
Oh,
asset.
for sure.
Isn't it epic? Like, that's how
100%.
we're even here. It's such a privilege to be in its midst.
Dude, I'm like I
Oh,
tried
dude.
this on several people that I know, several Bitcoiners, and they're all like looking at me like, "Who are you? What do you want?" But I started finding those people I can talk to them about it, those Bitcoiners that I can talk to them about it, because at one point when I was deep enough into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I felt like it was out of this world, and I felt like it's this gift that has been given,
Mhm.
and it's got its own consciousness, and we are communicating with it and
Mhm.
using it, and it's there for us to utilize. And yeah, most people think I'm crazy when I say that.
No, It- you're the inverse of that.
Okay.
Well, look at so all of nature is our harmonious meritocracy, right? Because everything has its merit along the life cycle, from producer to apex predator. Without either end of it, everything gets dysfunction. Well, how do I transpose that onto Bitcoin? Well, proof of work.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing as that sequence, right? You need the kilowatt hours, the producer, to get to the apex predator, which I call it apex collateral. Basically, it's the most pristine collateral asset on earth. It can, if I were to lay down the agenda for it, it would be bye bye central banks, bye bye government, and we're going to recapitalize that system with Bitcoin as the collateral of the system.
And much like nature, the Bitcoin network is reminding me of that mycelium, right? That
Mhm.
things are just there, like the base layer is there, and then everything that happens on top of it is whatever happens organically with free will, that it will, it keeps changing because new players come in, others die, they don't like the way it is, they fork out. That this is like in nature, it's the same thing. The trees die, plants die, there's new animals coming in, there's wars all the time. This is
Hopefully,
perfect.
if Bitcoin reconstitutes the equity capital of the planet, there won't be any wars. Because there's no wars but bankers' wars. Like the same group we're identifying that did COVID and all this other crap, it's the same group that's been doing this shit for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So once we augment or bifurcate and we ascend, essentially, and you know exactly what I'm saying, I can dive into that further, to the new plane of existence, then I don't see how it gets disrupted. Even if they EMP, even if they, I think bring it all on now because it's going to continue to evolve. It's indestructible. And I think each opportunity or each vector of attack that they have right now in America, if you're watching, which I hope you're not,
I'm
but
watching everything.
if you're watching any of mainstream media,
Oh no, I'm not watching that. No.
well,
But I'm
you
seeing clips.
right, they're like sound, and I only see clips too because I don't even have TV in
Mhm.
the classical sense. But it's the outrage on Elon just exposing what we as the constituent taxpayers of the United States have a legal right to. They're like, oh, look, unelected. Wait, you're unelected. I mean, it's just the most it's one of the most hypocritical things I've ever seen, which is a very low frequency emotion. I learned
Very.
recently, this is another aside, shame is the lowest frequency emotion.
Is
I thought
it?
it was fear. Yeah.
More than fear.
Hmm?
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Shame.
Hmm.
Yeah, shame is horrible.
As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, okay, that does make sense.
It does make sense in a
Hmm.
way. It's just it drags you down so deep, so low. I can I can understand. Wow. Okay, listen, I'm going to ask you some
Questions, go.
questions.
Ready.
Okay? With Gary Cardone, you said there should not be any fiat or any central banks. We should all get rid of fiat. Yet today, your profession and daily trade is around fiat markets with crypto instruments, right?
Hmm.
So what's your wishful thinking and your vision for how it's going, where it's going, the monetary system?
Wonderful question. Thank you for asking. Well, in my hedge funds, we already have the tech stack and the equations, and we currently are running strategies with BTC and ETH denominated strategies. So other assets on top of Bitcoin and Ethereum as denominators. So the possibilities are absolutely endless. Now you could do all of these. I have no judgment on this. I don't personally invest or trade these things, but all of these memes on Solana through a Phantom wallet, right? Well, there are pairs, right? And I really think the crypto space in general has overlooked privacy in general. There should be a lot of things on top of privacy tokens, and that should be revisited here, especially in this transition that we're in. But we are prepared for that world already. A fully on-chain, a fully de-fiated system.
Can you try to like dumb it down, simplify this for my audience that doesn't come from finance or Bitcoin? And
all right, so you want me to get into fiat? Or fiat is,
I mean, how you see the fiat-less world working, and how is your agency ready for it today?
So we're ready for it from a technological standpoint, right? Yep. We've got Lightning Network nodes here. We've got all of our own internal software. We've got the hardware. I mean, I'm this right in front of me. They're not paying me to do this, ladies and gentlemen, but they should be. We're just basically making sure that if tomorrow there's no USD, Euro, Yen, Renminbi, Rupiah, Peso flip into these assets, we can function. And we've actually been there for about 5 years already, technologically.
How probable is that, in your view?
Now you ask me to predict human behavior. I cannot.
And before I ask you to predict, I will tell you that the guy I told you about, Federico Fagin, the Italian physicist, he's saying, I'm quoting from the interview, "We're trying to predict the future. You cannot predict the future because it's based on free will. No one wants to go there right now. But that's the only way to go to be safe from this idea that machines and AI will best us." He goes, and then, he talks about it. It's beautiful. But I know predicting the future is just a game for me.
Right. And some of it can be like our confidence interval on predictions with respect to price are different because price is adjacent or tangent to free will, which basically is just an expression of two conditions, which is psychology and liquidity. Right. So that's maybe a little bit more concise of a process than going, when is this? How is this going to happen? Mechanically, it's easier for me to describe that because the current financial construct is such utter bullshit. It's pathetic. So that's just like an easy push aside. We globally default. We ban usury like it was in the past and just stop these practices that prey on people, create conditions for wars, and effectively disrupt or augment processes of abundance, prosperity, and peace.
So if the existing system is so shitty, as you say, and it is, how do you view what Musk and Trump are trying to do now with making things more efficient and reducing the national debt through efficiency?
That's so great, but that's just the narrative. All they're doing right now is exposing all this to get it in the consciousness.
Right. So it's not really, it's not in terms of finance and numbers. They're never going to win. It's not possible.
In my view, this is subjective. So
tell me why.
This is my opinion. I don't have any inside knowledge or awareness of their dealings. So this is just my opinion. But if I knew, and basically everybody in big business who's a billionaire, they know that we have to end the central banking system. They know that we can't have these technocratic, unelected, bureaucratic, deep state, blah, 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 whatever word salad you want to call that. The darkness, the evil, the parasites, the people who are charging 1.7 trillion of credit card debt at 26% in the United States. That's not a market-based rate. Like, they know it's never going to be paid back. So if we are in agreement that we have to, get out of this system, what's the pathway of least amount of destruction? Not least resistance, because power never wants to give up power willingly. So we have to disrupt, and we've got to transition. But essentially, there's a lot of different ways. But first, you got to prime the public for, wait a minute, you're doing what with trillions? And then, okay, you can't even keep track of that, but then the IRS comes after me for $600. Like, that has to enter the realm of consciousness
Right.
before we go, all right, well, auditing the Fed. Wait, who owns the Fed? 13 families, 6 banks.
Right. So you think it's like an entry point, a pathway to helping people wake up to the different truths. Let's use the word truths.
Like I'll use a woo people or hippie way of looking at it. Edward Casey's path is very similar, but different and separate to Dolores Cannon's, right? Those are just different views and ways of explaining and identifying what I think is very similar things. So there's a great current example of this. Bank of England, LBMA, it's all fraud, right? I'm referencing gold, right? A few years ago, they basically stopped nickel trading because they were all blowing up on paper. So all the hedge funds that were long nickel got busted, lost all their money, and they basically gave money to JP Morgan through the Bank of England from the people who were long nickel contracts. Well, now the whole world's demanding gold bullion be delivered, and the shell game of more paper than actual physical, which is going to occur in Bitcoin on these ETFs, is being shown. In fact, all ETFs have this, or almost all ETFs have this problem. It's a joke. It's not a real asset. But why that's relevant is that we're priming the pump of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Ron Paul have actually been calling this thing out at the Bank of England for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So look at how long it's taken for these truths to come out. Now they're coming out really, 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 really fast. All
one after the other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Insane.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to keep going, so don't worry. There's more where this came from. So you did. See, it's in my question. Is this a transitory phase? You said so without me asking that we're in a transitory phase. I wonder whether you define that transitory phase similarly to how I view it, in terms of, how every 80 to 110 years, more or less, there's like this change of a world empire and a reserve currency for the world, and we're kind of towards the end of that cycle now. And to me, it doesn't look like the US is going to give up that position of being the world's hegemony and holding the reserve currency. And I think the transition is going to be from the fiat dollar to the digital dollar, and it's going to take different shapes and forms with different monetary instruments to implement it. But this is my prediction that the US will continue to be the world leader for another century. What do you think?
Perhaps. That's a ton to unpack, right? Well, who runs the current US system?
The monetary?
Yeah. Which is it? Like, fine, Trump and Elon.
Fed, right? The families.
Right. The Fed
that
runs
the
the
Fed.
world. Right. So why US? Well, that's just their means.
Correct.
Right? So I agree on the surface. If that construct stays in power, that is what's going to happen. If that construct does not stay in power, that's not what's going to happen. And then, okay, if that construct doesn't stay in power, I can't predict that
which
outcome,
one will
right?
take,
Because
yeah.
hopefully we can all agree on meritocracy and competitive free market forces, and there won't just be one ring to rule them all, right? Because that's kind of, what do we want to do? The same thing we're doing now? So again, I can't outline it for everyone, but I can say, having been a constant student of history, we are at a amazing time to be alive.
Amazing time, right?
And we are very, very grateful to have most of the apparatus and the solutions right in front of us to make this as, least destructive when you're looking at foreturnings from the past, which are really destructive, always genocides, all blah, blah, blah. It doesn't even matter. Like, everybody has their I'm a victim thing that they can say throughout any time in history, because every peoples have had and there's a lot of genocides going on now, right? So put that aside and let's focus on getting rid of bad and going towards good. And we've got more of the tools to do it than I think ever before in history.
The only question is whether the consciousness will follow to do the right thing.
Well, and that's not even up to us.
Right.
Right. Which, like, that's
well,
where
it is in a way, if it's a collective consciousness that we're talking about.
But we're already going to ascend regardless if the rest of the people do.
Oh, sure.
So, and that, I know that might sound unfair, but like, come to the party, ladies and gentlemen. But you have to have that rebellion spirit inside of you, and the desire to know truth and not be afraid of truth. And if you don't, there's not a lot of help we can give.
Perfect. And that leads me perfectly to my next question. So I think we're on the same page with COVID was a scam, climate is a scam. The only danger to man really is pollution of the body and the environment via food, water, chemtrails, whatever they call them, geoengineering, poisonous pharma, and not really CO2 or all the propaganda that they're trying to shove down our throat.
Sorry? CO2 is not a pollutant. Carbon is not.
CO2 is the gas of life. It's ridiculous, of course. And you also said in Naples, we are at war and people are not waking up. Shit has already hit the fan. There are no more vectors left. So right. Can you elaborate on how you see this war we're in?
Because what's the word you use to describe the evil people or the parasites or the cabal or the deep state? What do you like to call them?
I give them many names.
Yeah, they do have many.
The power that want to be.
The powers that shouldn't be, maybe?
Yes.
All right, so that group, all right, let's just run down the plethora. All right, fluoride, right? Okay, chemtrails, geoengineering, infinity metals, infinity pathogens. All right, allopathic medicine. Oh, we got rid of homeopathic medicine. That's why you're all sick. Okay, food. There's literally not an angle they've not come at us since the late 18th century.
All vectors.
To hurt our pineal gland, to destroy our consciousness, and make us literal and figurative slaves, debt slaves specifically. And yeah, labor slaves too. And there wasn't a ethnicity to it. We are all currently debt slaves, and all of our bloodlines have been at one time physical slaves, all to the same group of entities or blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really even matter. And the good news is they're really weak people. Only weakness can be evil. Strength can't be evil.
Yeah, I'm with you. So inside that war we're in, where we are being attacked from all different directions, you are talking about raising consciousness is one of the things that we can do in order to elevate ourselves and not play the game that is being played right now. So I want to, if you'll allow me, I want to show you a little clip of what you said there in Naples. I love it.
I was fired up. Now that's not fair. This is in Florida amongst my people. So
oh, come on.
Yeah, I got no shame. I got no shame. But
hold on, my audience gonna love
I do remember not what I said, but that I was spicy.
You were great. You were on fire, dude. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
And I think all of us here should share personal views of what it means to try to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like some of it is spiritual and in prayer, meditation, reflection. A lot of it is health and getting metals and toxicity and pathogens out of your body, using all of your 7 senses. You have more than 5. And then understanding that we're actually facing, going through ego death and the trauma when you realize what you're facing, and then be a kinder, gentler, more harmonious with nature being to bring up your community.
And being kinder and gentler does not mean you're weak.
I love it. And
I need to somehow get a copy of that. That was a really, I don't do that. I mean, I'll go search it out because
I can help you make a clip out of that, dude.
Okay.
It's not that difficult. I'll do that for you.
I don't, that's not my spiel, as they say, but it was about as good as I can say anything for just a redneck from Florida.
That was lovely.
Yeah,
That was
thank
so
you.
Good. Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna finish like what I wanted to ask you about it. So,
I
do
should
you
be
have your
angry
own
when-
water resource? Do you have your stored food? Do you have your own energy source? Because you said, I think it
course.
was with Gary, Bitcoin, water, and women. That's what you need to survive.
Well,
How do
inverse
you
it.
prepare
Water, women,
yourself?
Bitcoin. Water.
Okay. Water,
Well,
women.
and that's just, it's my little rambunctious way of honoring my mother and my wife, right? And honoring life in that you can't have one without the other. And male species cannot produce life, only the female species can. And that water is integral to all of life. It's an expression of life. And then Bitcoin can be, I think, the instrument of freedom and peace and prosperity. And so to me, having invested in everything, done well, had mess ups, I see what the most valuable things on earth are, in my view, and that's those three.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even arguable. You can't have life without it. And then
Right.
we might not be able to have freedom without Bitcoin, is my point with that.
Yeah, and this is good. It's good that you're saying that, because let's talk about the resistance I get about Bitcoin from a lot of my audience who has been like me, red pilled during COVID, but then not orange pilled, and they're so
They
suspicious.
kind of go together.
What's that?
They kind of go together.
That's what I thought.
Right.
To me, it's very natural, but apparently not to everyone. Most people, they become skeptical if they don't do the spiritual work, I think, or the inner mental work to not go down the black pill path, that they will be extra suspicious and skeptical about things. That's one. And two, they may still be lazy because they haven't learned the lesson from COVID. They still be lazy enough not to go and do their own research. And so and Bitcoin forces you to learn. And if you don't do the work, you will not know. And that's a life lesson. It's not about Bitcoin. It's about life. Like you have to, that lesson of trust, of don't trust, verify. That's a life lesson, and Bitcoin gives you the opportunity to learn it. But they get stuck there, and they are being fed from, I mean, I'm talking about that group in my audience that is being fed from all the FUD about Bitcoin and the Telegram clips and the, and the gold bugs saying the Bitcoin is bad and dangerous and all that. And normally I know how to answer most of their suspicions, but when it comes to, Bitcoin sets you free, they go, okay, but it has been hijacked, right? There's this stupid FUD now about Bitcoin being hijacked by the institutions. And so I am very, I mean, I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of investigations, and I don't really see a risk in that. At the same time, I'm staying open to things I don't know. For example, I don't know much about market liquidity, and I don't know much about price manipulations. I do see how the price can be manipulated in gold and in paper gold, but I can see that something similar could happen with the Bitcoin ETFs. And when I put that together with my experience in marketing, knowing that one of the most important or most efficient tools to control people is through their perception and what they believe and propaganda, then if enough people are going to be convinced that Bitcoin can be controlled because they are controlling the price, and the price is dictating a lot of the psychology behind Bitcoin, people may not join or may not embrace it or may continue to be suspicious of it because of the FUD that is out there. So I'm interested in your view. You understand liquidation, you understand, pricing. So
You touched on this a little bit earlier.
okay.
Let me first say the price in dollars or euro yen, it doesn't
matter.
Stop being. I'm going to try not to be mean. So I'll stop what I was about to say. All right, let's use gold. And I think, my primer for Bitcoin was being a gold bug. Why? Because gold's been money forever. Okay. Well,
Mr. and Mrs. Goldbug, how's that work out the last 25 years, right? And the fact that gold's still, a tangible asset, they still papered over it and suppressed it. Oh, wait. And then in 1933, they stole it all from the rich people in America. By the way, there was a bank holiday that bankrupted the majority of the wealth in 1933, where they just shut down banks, just like they're about to do now, or they started doing in March of 2023. So, I'm with the always be skeptic. Null hypothesis is the only scientific method. But at the same time, game theory out, worst case scenarios. Of course, BlackRock didn't enter for good reasons. Duh. I mean, but what is the use case for Bitcoin? It did not change. The necessary hertz, which is now I think 1/3 hydro in terms of the inputted electricity, which is great, beautiful, better than wind and solar because those are horrific for the environment. It's going to fight its own battle. And your choice to stay away from it because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt is yours to make. But at the same time, you might want to look why that's occurring. Wait a minute. There's only 21 million. There's 19.578 by today, I think, give or million being mined, plus or minus 4 to 6 million lost, right? So all these big institutions, big investors, Wall Street, whatever, not all of them are part of the powers that should not be. And they go, oh, shit. If this is going to get recapitalized, we need to take from the weak and make them afraid. So I could be wrong with that assessment, but that's certainly part of the potentiality that's occurring now. And then, yeah, could it have come from DARPA? Game theory that out. So did the internet, but the internet's now how we're doing this.
Exactly.
So it's good and important to weigh all evidences, have all arguments, first with yourself, then with others. And then what's going to happen in the future, you cannot do a MFing thing about. So it's always best efforts, do what you can, live to fight another day.
Yep.
That's it.
So
and then, oh, by the way, do you have a better option?
Right.
No. Okay. Do I still have gold? Sure. Do I care what the price is? No. But is it limited in how much I can carry around to protect my family and debank with it? Yeah. Well, it's not limited with Bitcoin.
So yeah, I always get to that conclusion as well, that in the end of the day, all the actual concerns are related in some way or another to price and to dollar price,
which is weakness
liquidity and yeah. And so what? I'm not in Bitcoin for the price. I'm there because there is an alternative monetary system that I can hedge my energy in. and that's Bitcoin, and it's for my freedom. It's for my sovereignty. It's not. I mean, if I'm going to be rich, great, bring it on. But that's not why I'm there. I'm there because. What's that?
What is rich?
What is rich? Rich in terms of money in my pocket, right?
Well, what is money?
It's the tool to be able to fulfill my needs.
The money you think you have. What form is it in?
Currently, it's mostly in Bitcoin.
Well, good, because that is a really difficult thing to confiscate or steal from you, right? Yeah. Well,
and some gold as well, by the way.
Right, yeah. And 1 increment of gold, 9 increments of Bitcoin sounds good. Silver's really, really cheap from a relative value perspective. I'm not going to get in the way of anybody acquiring and accumulating tangible assets.
Yeah.
Buy properties with spring water on them. Ooh, great. I mean, all of those things are way more valuable, way more important. But I think what you're really articulating is the narrative of, I'm going to have it now, but then I'm going to get rid of it later so that I can do this with it, right? Uh-huh. And that's the trap of everything about investing to begin with. Oh, I'm going to learn how to trade options so I can buy a yacht. Oh, I'm going to learn how, good luck, because you're competing against people like me and people way smarter than me, and you're gonna lose all your money.
Uh-huh.
Right. So there's definitely that element, and I think where it's occurring now is because the libertarian anarchist base that sort of adopted this in aggressively in 2010 to 2013's vintage is largely lost and misrepresented or just ignored at this point for those pushing essentially just for a number goes up narrative, which is irrelevant to the quality of the asset itself or the pristineness of Bitcoin as collateral. And so to me, I get that people are stressed. They want prosperity, and I don't fault them for having that ambition or that desire. And I'm not picking on that. But if you remove yourself out of that equation, you'll have a lot more peace.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, thank you for that. I want to ask.
Question, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah, well, because I have a unique view as both kind of a OG for whatever that means. I'd love to be a 90s like rapper OG. That's way more cooler than crypto OG. And I desperately miss 90s style or 80s style hip hop and rap. I miss all the musical genres that this hours that should not be have destroyed. Anyhow, you asked that in a way that pulled out what my internal interpretation and processing of that is, and hopefully that's helpful to people.
Yes, I think it is. And I think more and more people need to get away from the price, the dollar price. It's like, it's such a distraction.
You know, it's hilarious. The sentiment's awful now. It's at 96,000. What do you want it to do? Like, what is the matter with you people?
I know.
Do you realize I was debanked March of 23, and with the Democrats, or as I call them, the commie-crats in the United States, had a anti-crypto army, not but 18 months ago, right? Not that wouldn't have even changed until Trump was elected. And you people are not satisfied with the fact of state reserve currencies, Bahrain, Bhutan, or I'm saying that wrong. Bhutan. Beautiful. I mean, they really have dialed in the exact modality that I would even move there if they had a coastline for me to surf on. Give me a break. How can you expect something in 14 and a third years to achieve what it's achieved? Like, how? That's like saying, hey, my son just won the Little League World Series, pitched a no-hitter.
And having the front runner advantage for individuals.
Never before in any cycle has that happened. Thank you for pointing it out. But like, take the win. That's literally the same thing as saying my son pitched a no-hitter for the Little League World Series. But you know what? He threw like 5 balls. I mean, come on. It's 1,000 million trillion Satoshis worth of epic and a few things. And then, oh, by the way, okay, BlackRock, bad. ESGs, Davos, blah, blah, blah. Cool. 2 things as a human. 1, people can ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness is divinity. No matter what your religious teacher says, forgiveness is divine. And not everybody who's bad is always going to be bad, right? People can see the light. So that's process of potential good, number 1. And number 2, even if you assume the motive is evil, they obviously recognize the value of it. So, all right, appraise it for what it is.
Fair game, yeah.
And the network, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it is very difficult and very improbable to be able to take over the network now.
Right.
And then because we have a great example, we'll just do it again with something else.
Right.
So all of the analytics that you can put on it can arrive can really only arrive at a positive appraisal.
See, and that's, that level of conviction that you have had made you open your business the way you did and bet on it so widely, right?
And it really hasn't paid off.
No.
Yet. Think of what it's paid off in. And what I mean by that is I ran more money 20 years ago than we do in the crypto space, right?
I get it. I get what you mean. When you compare fiat to
and then
Bitcoin
it's still
world,
like for projects, for asset managers, it's still arm, tooth, and leg just to give a value proposition of the space. It's like you're selling the political narrative of it. You're selling the freedom narrative of it. You're selling the upside asymmetry in fiat terms of it.
Yes.
And then, then you've got to learn everything about every asset that's in the space. Then you have to have strategies and systematic and quantitative and algorithms that then trade it so it's risk managed, but gives you a lot of the upside and has a good balance between the two. Okay, that's infinity jobs to try and deliver something to someone that's effectively charity. So I'm just saying it's been a amazing and super awesome challenge, but it's not just been proof success, because the traditional measurement of that has really largely not been achieved by this space, which can only be full adoption. And then we've got PTSD. I've seen so many of my friends with our similar good intentions go out of business, right? Because of they had money on FTX, or their clients got scared, pulled out all the money. It's not been a easy pathway for asset managers in the space.
How many more or less are there in that space that are doing like hedge funding?
A few hundred that were crypto native.
Yes.
Now there's, in my view, less than 50.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So few.
And now there's
most
more
of them in the US, by the way.
It was a overweight to Europe initially. Then Southeast Asia, and between basically 18's bear market and 2020 and 22's bear market, those two seem to have gotten the most whipsawed or destroyed. And US has kind of just been like on a slight up and to the right path because of venture, private equity, because you're never going to be able to take the capitalism out of the United States. So being enamored by the tech and then risk taking, like there's always going to be investors that support that. So I think now you're starting to see a little bit of unlock in the US, but yeah, I mean, it's just been slow. A lot of pain here.
Yeah.
But like I've said before, and you've heard me saying, Gary, I freaking love it. Like, because material wealth is an illusion at best.
Yeah.
And I kind of already have that too. So depending on what your magnitude is, like when you have a skill set like me, you really don't ever get afraid because you can just produce it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's why I don't have any fear about that. People tell me, so what? Like, I'm a journalist now. I hardly make any money. I make a little bit, a little bit of money, but it doesn't matter because I know I have the skills. The moment I want to,
flip the switch, you go do it. You can.
Yeah, I can do it. And I've got enough say. It's like, this is just a tool. This is not what is supposed to pivot my life and to decide for me which direction my life's going to take. This is just a tool. And and I think I've mastered how to generate it. So no big deal. I totally identify with what you said. You mentioned that you were debanked last year or 23?
23, yeah. Yeah, where they shut off your bank accounts.
Why?
Because we were in crypto. Yeah, and then Signature and Silvergate, which is where we have operating accounts and investment accounts. And the Democrats just were deeming.
And what damage did you suffer?
It was a net loss of around 11-12% of total.
Fuck.
Yeah.
So you had your accounts in those banks, in one of those? Fucking hell.
And they just turned them off. And then the narrative they gave the public was, oh, they were leveraged, the bullshit. Even Barney Frank came out, who I'm not a huge fan of, but came out and said, we were solvent. And they shut him up immediately. And this is why.
God, what a can of worms.
Silicon Valley Bank gets full bailout, but then other banks going bankrupt it's just, we have to focus 100% of our energy on eliminating central banks. All of this accounting kerfufflesness, it's all going to go away if you stop central banking. No wars, no poison, fiat food, like for our terminology. It just all will stop.
The head of the snake, huh?
It is. And the history goes all the way back to Babylon, and it's involved in every single destructive empire in all of mankind's history.
I'm going to have Caitlin Long on my show too. I have to speak to her. She's a freedom fighter.
There's been a lot. And the good news is that we have a lot of examples to base our modality on.
Yes.
Like my favorite's always the Spartans. And then next would be the founders of America. But what they faced and their culture, it's not for everybody, but I just see that as it's so far the other direction of where we're at now that it's so disciplined, it's so alpha that we could learn a lot from revisiting some of their practices. They used, lead as a lead coins like that. It's a totally different way of living, but I think their courage and bravery is no one's ever matched that, in my opinion.
So I don't know if you've understood what I said before. You know Caitlin Long.
Of course I know.
Oh, so I want to have her on my podcast.
Mhm.
And I think she's one of those Spartans. She's got those qualities of
Mhm.
fighting back the central banking.
They've been messing with her the entire time.
And she's
She's got a bank
standing
charter in Wyoming, by the
strong
way. Yeah.
in front of them. Like, she's unreal. I love her qualities. So-
People don't understand, and thank you for recognizing the courage it takes to do that.
Oh, far out.
You have to be ready to go, because that's how they've dispensed of people plenty of times in history and are doing it now. And so you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And as you said before, if you are doing the work, then you know that when it's your time to go, it's the time to go. And you're committed to the game.
Mm-hmm. It's literally, and I sense it more in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks than I ever have. Like, it's now or never. Right now, it's now or never.
It's money time, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's game time, right?
It's game time. Yeah.
Come on, humans, let's all unite. Let's get rid of what we all can agree is the only hindrance to peace, prosperity, and abundance, because they stand in the face of that. And then, okay, we eliminate that one evil. Let's see what happens after that. All right, give it 6 months or a year, see where we're at, and we can tackle another vector that we all agree is disrupting us. And then all of the so-called religious divisions are from the central banks too. It's just complete construct.
I really hope that that's going to change this year.
It's not going to change this year.
Not this year, huh?
I would love to be wrong, but I think the best way, if we did like a grassroots thing where you had the best and brightest from technology, finance, and then you had like, imam, rabbi, and like pope go, hey, we are the Abrahamic religions. We stand against you, and and we have like an army, some kind of like beautiful scene like that to disrupt these powers that cannot be. When we recognize, wait, hey guys, we're all supposed to be enemies, but I'm pretty sure what I learned, they're all Abrahamic religions. Like, how did they convince us to be enemies? That's really the question I'm asking, right? So something that's that disruptive to unite everyone and make it, because you can't. Part of the problem with the higher consciousness is that the normies, the NPCs, the blah, 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 it's not as accessible as it is to you and I, right? And that breaks my heart, because you don't want people being angry, like if they're scared in the IDF or scared that they're a Palestinian who's a victim of Hamas, everybody's a victim of terrorism. Like, come on, guys, let's be on the side of peace and help one another. Not be because fear is so destructive. Having women and children be afraid is not. It enrages me that men allow that to occur on a day-to-day basis. But to me, the pathway to uniting and enlightening is such an easy one if we all can have the dialogue. And I know that's wishful thinking, but we're not that far off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope so. And I with you, I'm seeing around me so much, like I'm seeing how far we are from it, and at the same time there are some like sparks of hope and light here and there where people are starting to understand stuff, but it's not on a massive scale. So maybe such a cataclysmic event is needed to drive a change.
At least I would hope that that's not the case, but historically, like, okay, how are you going to convince people that the existing system is a parasite, right? Well, they're going to have to realize what we already know is law. You are an unsecured creditor to your bank account, and they already have the legal remedies in place to do what's called a great taking. Mr. Webb, thank you. And just confiscate it. It can be a bailout or a bail-in, but poof, from usually between a Friday and a Monday, your money's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's already not there. You know why? Go try and withdraw 5,000 USD. What happens? Oh, they file a suspicious activity report on you trying to use your own money. So, come on. I would almost, like, if it's a betting game, I'm betting the 100 to 1 odds that is one of the main triggers for people. And as such, it's not wise to leave lots of liquidity in those banking institutions to be confiscated.
Agreed.
That's my humble advice. I'm only going to give it once to everybody. I've said it a few times here to date because I could sense that this is on the horizon.
Yep.
I'm not certain of how Elon or Trump or anybody who's very conscious of this, Scott Bassett, how they can get in the way of it, because both in Europe and in Asia and the United States, there's a legal ability to do it. And then the central banks have the technological ability to do it. What they did to Russia was a great example. They stole $270 billion from the Russian taxpayers. Fine if you want to harm Putin or critique him, but that's not the taxpayers' fault. They're not wanting to go to war with anyone, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So how do we technologically get in the way of that? My and my wife's way of doing it is just getting it out of the system.
Exactly. Same for me.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I know whatever I leave there, okay, might see it and it's gone the next day, fine.
Exactly. Just see it
whatever.
as a write-off, or
We're going to have to reconstruct everything anyways, 5, 6, 2, whatever the duration is. So, if I have to sacrifice a few $100K so that everybody can wake up, fine. I'm happy to do it. And then maybe the people not willing to do that might want to rethink
Right. So if you're in my audience and you're listening, and you have been listening now for 1 hour and 45 minutes, and I salute you, then so it means you're with us, right? You're listening to that conversation. And if you are understanding or starting to understand that your what's called money is not safe in a what's called bank because it's not yours and because it's not there.
Those are two bad reasons.
It's not even there, right? So if you're with us so far and you get that, you hear that advice, right? And you are still being met with that resistance of, but what do I do when I take it out? And the first thing you think of is gold. Great, go buy gold, physical gold, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you're smart enough and you're aroused enough to go check Bitcoin, then go check Bitcoin and get over your own fear of doing this. But you do have to put in the work, okay? And then whatever you choose, as long as you have the minority of your assets in fiat and the rest in other commodities or assets like Bitcoin, then you're probably going to be better off if a scenario like the one we are describing is going to happen. And I think it's quite probable that it's going to happen in light of, since I'm doing my work, as a journalist, looking at all the different publications that are coming out from places like the World Economic Forum and the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, etc. They are prepping the ground for such an event. They are coming up with all these crazy excuses for why such thing would happen. One of those scenarios would be a cyber attack that would cause the financial system to collapse. Yes, it may also be a climate change event, like a catastrophic weather event that would cause the financial system to go down. They actually have some videos that they have produced about that. So they are prepping, they are definitely doing if I'm reading the signals, they are signaling that such a scenario could happen. So if you're in the business of risk assessment and hedging yourself and taking care of your family and yourself, then you may want to listen to those signals and to those advices. And it's your choice.
You're exactly correct. I went through your work on CBDCs is magnificent, by the way. Thank you for having the courage to expose it and to dive into the tech to make people understand it. Because part of what they're going to flip people into as they do a bail-in is, let's say you have 100 KUSD in Bank of America. Yep. All right, the bail-in occurs, they recapitalize, and now you have 30K of what's my favorite way? Empire credits, like from Star Wars, that expire in 60 days, 90 days. Oh, you can't buy red meat. Oh, ma'am or sir, you can't have testosterone. You can't have red meat. You can't. Here's your fluoride. Here's your fiat food. Here's your eat the bugs, right? Like, people, like, this is on deck. As you mentioned correctly, the pre-programming is there. The Hegelian dialectic is there. And almost all I see in the way of this is in part the United States, in part people like Viktor Orban, and in some degrees Xi Jinping and Putin, and some degrees even Iran, because their banking system's separate from this. Some degrees India, but like the whole continent of Africa is in their control now. Almost all of Europe is in their control now. Most of South America is in their control. I think the United States just took over Panama. Good. Mexico is now run by them. So it's the probability that they at least try this, because of all of what I just articulated, is extraordinarily high. I'd love to be wrong, but in all of your CBD presentations that I watched, I mean, you have it. That's where they're going to. Why would they build all of that?
Right.
If they're not going to roll it out. And oh, by the way, folks, this stuff all went fully capable in July of 23. They can flip the switch.
Why July of 23?
That's when the wholesale channels were tested and went into production for all of the CBDC infrastructure.
Okay, with Enbridge?
With
Project
FedNow.
Enbridge?
FedNow.
With FedNow.
And then the Bank of International Settlements has tested this, IMF.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Got it. Yes.
Yeah. And then opening up I mean, and I don't want to take away from the questions, but this.
No. This is perfect. It's tying in with everything we were saying, because this is the new presentation that I made, and I presented it last month in El Salvador. Is called The New Monetary Order in a Changing World, and that's where I'm showing all the different financial instruments that that the powers that shouldn't be are going to try and use in the coming years in order to move or transition into a new monetary system that is digital and global. And because it's such a chaotic time and such a chaotic process, then we're kind of in the phase of a smorgasbord, like a buffet of instruments that they can play around and try. One of them is CBDC, retail CBDC. Yep. One of them is ETFs. Basically, let's tokenize any and every asset and put it on a blockchain, on a permissioned blockchain, of course, and let's use KYC Bitcoin as well in that experiment. So that there are going to be many different types of tools that they are going to try and implement on a nation state level in the next few years, because in the end of the day, their channel to communicate with each other is the wholesale CBDC or other means of, kind of they call like the DLT, right? Distributed ledger technology that the EU is experimenting with 48 different nations on one DLT, and wholesale CBDCs experimented between different countries. And
I love that they're proving the premise of the technology, right?
Oh yeah, dude, they're completely like reinventing the wheel, trying
to validating the blockchain itself.
They're rebuilding Bitcoin as if Bitcoin didn't exist. It's so hilarious to watch. Like, and I said yesterday when I talked to Paul, your colleague from Byte Federal that was with you in Florida, I spoke to him yesterday, to Paul.
He's a lovely human.
He's amazing. And I was telling him that, and I told him, like, I don't get paid for all that stuff that I do, but whenever I do what I do and I go to watch all these videos of the central bankers or I read their documents, I feel so dirty afterwards. I need a shower and I need to get fucking paid so much more than I did in fiat world, because it's such a hard job that I have selected, but it's so important that someone does that and actually goes through what they're doing, because then I can, just like you, I cannot predict the future, but what I can do is I can show you what they're doing now, what they're planning and what they are trying to build. And if their plans are successful, then that's what we're going to get. And if they fail, which I hope, or at least in some of what they do, then great, we have Bitcoin. But it's just fascinating to see, like, the time we're in. I think until the end of this decade, like until 2030, we're going to be at a time where different countries are experimenting with different technologies, but everyone is trying to go digital and go global. And we're going to be there with our Bitcoin flag, which is going to be quite strange for many people because they're going to go, oh, it's controlled as well. It's the same thing. It's another digital currency. And we're going to go, no, but it's different.
I respect
so our
that.
job is going to get even more complicated, I think, in the next few years as the mainstream adoption happens.
It's certainly going to be exciting.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'll stop so you can ask more questions.
Okay, my last question.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
Yeah, it's my last question, but then I have to say something else. But I heard you say in Florida as well that Trump has controlled the position. Can you say more about that?
I was purposely throwing that out there.
Why?
That was like, because the crowd had this vibe.
Did you want to shock them?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was coming from a place of, okay, these, we're taking our time out, John Burnett, Paul, to really kind of go, here's how we've done prepping, right? As anybody, and I run a hedge fund, of course, like hedging and prepping, same thing. And they were just kind of glazing over, and
like looking at you with this empty.
And then that's I don't know if it's on the video, but I leaned forward and started getting like upset with them basically. And I threw out that to just trigger some game theory on an analysis of that. And I've done that too. Like you can't make any assumptions. And then some of the people that he surrounded himself with speak to that possibility, maybe not probability. And I just wanted to kind of shock them into participation, because I think we run the risk of like the United States freedom movement and truth movement kind of backing off offense and go, oh, Trump's in, Elon's in, Vivek's in. Oh, Bobby Kennedy, he's in. I don't need to worry about anything, right? And give the globalists, the powers that cannot be, or what, more runway. And no, we are on offense until Agenda 2030, that date. And Cliff High actually gets into this, by the way, people, 27 and 2030. And then June, July are really important this year, by the way. And that
really?
Oh, yeah. You know who Cliff High is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna listen to what
his work
about
on
June,
the
July.
sort of the natural language processing, the O physics, it's so enlightening. I don't really have the mental bandwidth to like really capture where he's at, but it's a great Substack for those people to dive into to catch up quickly with what he's doing, because it all plays in. And so I don't want anybody to feel comfortable, give up, and give any leeway. We have this trajectory of awakening. We have this rise in consciousness. We have this seeking of truth, and we need to be ready to rock and keep pushing and not take for granted, right? So that's why I did that.
And if I can just pull on that thread a bit more, that connects to me to the need of people to be saved, and that notion of being saved and having a savior and looking at someone as their savior. They may not even call him or them that way, but essentially that's what they're looking for. And whenever I identify that, I go, fucking stop.
It's
Look
lazy.
Inside. It's fucking lazy.
Yes.
It's lazy, and you're not doing the work. Look inside. It's within you. Stop all that nonsense.
What you couldn't see in that setting, that triggered the MF out of those people.
Really?
And it accomplished exactly what, because people, look, there are, and I think I chastised people being overweight. I was mean to some degree, but it was people paid to be there. It was a closed circle of Floridians. Our state, we're our own mother effing country. We could kick everyone ass on the earth, including China. Everybody should watch their back. So that was like, guys, this isn't a time to celebrate. Like, let's go to work. Let's push the envelope, stay on offense, and make sure you're bringing up everybody, big chain link of good humans. And that was one of the ways that I triggered them. And I don't know how long the video went on, because
40 minutes.
I kind of at least afterwards, or maybe on stage, because those things are streams of consciousness, similar to this. So I don't recall like if Ben's representatives came up and saying, "Oh, that was smart, Chris. You were like driving them to think and challenge it." And right, when I saw that it was just being glazed over, I think you could see there's a pivotal moment where I get like aggressive, and that was part of my way of doing it. Not saying it was the best or smartest way of doing it, but that was the purpose behind it.
I get it. So you don't really think that he's controlled the position?
Not today. I do not.
Not
But
today.
he could be. He could be today too, right? But I have to judge actions, right?
Uh-huh.
And the actions thus far blown me away. So, first off, he's a good man. I can measure that very simply by his wife, his grandkids, his kids.
Okay.
He's a good man. Sure, he makes mistakes, but men are stupid. We all make mistakes, right? Fine. We're like one standard deviation different from one another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women are much better and more dynamic and more valuable than men. But so I already know he's a good man, but and I know he's not into this transhumanist agenda of destroying the family, destroying faith and spirituality, and destroying economies. He's not down with that. But we have to,
But Musk is.
He's both, in my view.
Both. Yes, he's both. That I agree with that.
And he's going to thread that needle all the way until he's going to have to actually pick a side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I
it's
think
going to be super interesting to watch.
But remember, he can ask for forgiveness, and then everybody can change, right? He's having too much fun disrupting the darkness, and that even Mark Zuckerberg, who I couldn't trust as far as I could throw him, you can feel in his tonality.
Oh,
Man,
dude, I can't. I'm sorry.
Well, look, I'm gonna give a benefit of the doubt to all scenarios, right?
Okay.
I'm not.
You're
I've
much
learned-
better than me, much higher soul than me.
I've learned not to be rigid, right? And I'm not calling you rigid. I'm just saying, look, and then, all right, let's appraise it as kind of a bro, because it could be all fake, but just run with me. Look, if you're raping children and you're drinking adrenochrome and you're conjuring money and you're seeing more bombs than World War II being dropped on 22 miles of land in the Middle East, and you're witnessing terrorism occur when it's financed by all the 3-letter agencies, and okay, there's a point where you're like, I did this to make $1 billion. I'm worth $100 billion. Mother F that. I'm not going along with this. They want to kill everyone.
Yeah.
They want to destroy it. So you have to, at least in your analysis of game theory, in the spectrum of potential outcomes, you have to give some benefit of the doubt to people who just don't want to do that, right? Not everybody is as dark as the powers that should not be, right? And they're super dark, whether it's Luciferian, Freemason, blah, secret society, Bilderberg, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't even matter. It's all the same apparatus, right? Yeah, you have to be really evil to do the kind of things they're doing. They're obviously not religious or spiritual or have any faith in anything other than maybe Lucifer or whatever construct you want to believe is that. And that could also be an extraterrestrial, an Anunnaki, an Nephilim, blah, 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 right? Or a draconian, a reptilian, if you want to go down the real woo-woo path. So all I am is open to first forgiving what they've done in the past, welcoming them into the higher consciousness. And dude, Elon is there. They're brilliant. Mark's brilliant. So I don't like, bro, I'm not, and you might get this, dude. And, we've been in the same room before. I ain't putting no chip in here. And then all of us are using this to combat what you're doing with Starlink. And we are. So, but
yeah,
it's just, he has to pick for himself.
Yeah, Musk is a very interesting character. And watching his actions is very, very interesting.
Well, and he knows the frequency of beaming that stuff from there is so horrible for our bodies and he knows that. And Joe Rogan knows that he knows that. They need to be a little more transparent and go, but at the same realm, he can flip the frequencies to positive also. So nothing's to me like fully ever won or lost, right? Until the battle's over. Well, in reality, in my opinion, to see Ron Paul get recommended to audit the Fed.
Unbelievable.
I'm almost like in Bitcoin's 100 grand countries. Like I can go rest, guys. Like this is good enough for me. Like I can
go on a holiday.
Yeah, like honestly, take the wins, but then because this is brought forward, we've won a battle, but now the war started. And people have to look at what they're seeing. People freaking out and saying all these lies. You're all over the planet, right? And like I've witnessed Israelis protest against Netanyahu. I know the illegality. It's not my place to say as a citizen what I would recommend doing. But hey, man, there's a lot of tyranny and bad people all over the place. And they're strong arming all kinds of stuff. None of it, or most of it at least, not for good. And all constituent peoples have the right to their own representation that they collectively want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And if you don't like where you're at, migrate somewhere else.
Right.
Too effing bad. Everybody needs sovereignty. All nations need borders. All cultures are worthy of protection, in my humble opinion. All can add value, and there's different skill sets. So in order to have the most robust economy and healthiest competition, we have to get whatever region or cultural or ethnic skill sets push production of whatever to offer the world food, technology, manufactured goods, textiles. Like, great, awesome. If we all had look at all the futuristic, what's the word I'm missing? End of the world stuff. Oh, dystopian, right? They're wearing all gray and monochrome, and that's not artistic. That's not high consciousness. It's sad. Is that what everybody wants? You want to look like what the EU looks like when they go meet, or how our Congress does? It's terrifying.
It's not fun. Okay, you know that because of you.
Oh God.
I'm not saying thanks to you. I'm saying because of you. I've been listening. I almost finished. I think I did 65% of the book in like a couple of days. The Road to Serfdom.
Oh God, yeah, Mr. Hayek, thank you.
Mr. Hayek.
Yeah.
So because of you, no,
good.
I'm having fun. But it's one of those heavy books that you really are learning about history and also about human activity and production and economy and what you were just mentioning now, like how can we make our economy as efficient as possible? And so that book is a really great way in to that conversation to start thinking about that. So thank you for the recommendation there. It was on your conversation with Breedlove, I think, that you recommended it. On that note, do you have other good books or podcasts that you could recommend my audience to go follow or read if they want to take their first steps into economics or Bitcoin?
The Austrians you have to read before getting into maybe the Bitcoin standard, which is what I read first. And I do think Roger Ver's critiques are legit from his point of view on Bitcoin being captured, but only in sort of passing. But I think Murray Rothbard.
What do you mean only in passing?
Well, it's just conjecture until it is. Like, okay, yes, your appraisal is correct, but there's no real finality of this. We're not even close to that yet.
Okay. All right. I understand. Yeah, good. Thank you. Go on.
Right. And people are not forecasting or even really analyzing the adaptability and evolutionary process of all of us, right? So you're just looking at, in my critique of his view, is that he's looking at it through one prism, right? And that one prism is not going to guarantee a specific outcome correlated to that prism. It may, but there's just no finality or definitive nature to that. And this is what I've learned as a quant and as a human. And to speak in absolutes is just something I try to avoid. I'm guilty of it sometimes. But I think read the Austrians.
So Hayek and Mrs.
And Rothbard.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
And then you really need to read about Andrew Jackson's fight against the bankers. It'll inspire.
Jackson? I don't think I've read his fight against the
bankers. Because in America, the founding of America was really the most specific and prominent example of fighting the same evil we're fighting now. And they chased those men and women that formed the country down
many times, and there was a few versions of the central bank before getting to the Federal Reserve in 1913. And really, even what we know, the Empire of England was colonial and da-da-da-da, but it wasn't the taxpayer base of there. That was the same thing we're talking about now. Smedley Butler's book, No Wars But Bankers' Wars, all of that is coalescing around this ability to conjure money.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah.
What about favorite podcasts, if
Um,
any?
So I just was turned on to yours, which is super good. And I noticed you're the voice is a decade in the making ish.
No, mine?
Yeah.
Oh, super new. It's like less than 2 years. 65 episodes so far.
Well, to my, I guess, infantile awareness of the interweb, because I'm just not a very big consumer of the vector. Like where I got it was just, all right, you communicated with me, then I looked you up and I found all the stuff. But there's
I make a lot of content, but not everything goes on the podcast. So I do write a lot, and
there's a search
I do,
result. Huge.
yeah,
Okay.
and
Either way,
blog and everything.
doing that.
And a lot of social media, but the podcast is something I want to do more and more of. But I've only done 65 so far.
Because I don't have infinity time. I mean, I love Breedlove is a good buddy of mine. Like we're brothers, so I love his stuff, and that's why you don't see me on there all the time, because we're never going to have the audience think that there's any collusion or anything other than the organic nature of when we need to talk about something, he brings me on. His interview of Jack Kruse or Dr. Kruse was epic. That dude is so awesome. I really like I really like Joe. I really love Tucker. I think they're great. I honestly really loved Howard Stern as an interviewer.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Until he got COVID crazy.
Yes,
and I'll forgive him for that. I loved it. I purchased all of XM and Sirius because of Howard. He would have bands on, and he was avant-garde. He was rebellious. So I really miss him, so to speak. I miss Rush Limbaugh too, in the same vein. But currently, I'm just not as super informed because I don't have a ton of time to consume. We're 24/7 managing client assets.
Yeah. I understand. And what about spirituality, book or something?
I think you have to start with Diary of a Yogi.
Okay.
I think that's maybe one of the better ways. And I forgot Billy Carson, by the way. He is awakening the bejesus out of people fast. He's so awesome. And I don't really get a chance to see all he's doing. I just know what he's up to and how well versed he is in history. And I think he's got like 4 or 5 PhDs. But those are great sources. And then we talked about Gaia. But I think on the woo-woo stuff, Diary Yogi, you have to start there because that's, in my view, one of the genesis of the awakening of spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Beautiful.
Yeah, and Yoga Nidra, it's so awesome.
Chris, a message of hope for my audience before we close off?
Yes. So like I said in the video, be gentle and be kind, but be a warrior. Know that you're powerful. Know that you're free and you have free will. And don't let, for men, anybody, your wife, tell you what to do. And for everyone else, just rebel against tyranny, because as the American forefathers said, rebellion to tyranny is obedience to God. And that's something I'm saying to give people power. You're not weak. You're not alone. All this construct we are battling spiritually, metaphysically right now, I believe we're going to win. It's going to take time. It's going to get worse before it gets better. That's part of the process. And just take it all in and fight hard every day. But do it in a way that's kinder and gentler to people. And then remember, forgiveness is divine.
Forgiveness is divine. I love it. This is amazing, an amazing message. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
I want to give you a little sentence that I took from Tears for Fears, Seeds of Love, one of my favorite band and favorite songs. From Seeds of Love, it's time to eat all your words, swallow your pride, open your eyes. Right? So,
it's timeless.
Yeah. maybe I'll play this song in the end of this episode. This was epic. I am so glad I invited you to come on.
Well, hopefully I will be worthy of another, because I have.
Of course you will be. I
Wait,
think
I mean,
we
we
have
went-
so much to talk about.
Mhm. And I have many questions, because we're all kind of formulating our own theses and practices based on, going down. I have like a bowling ball or a bowling lane analogy where you got to put up the bumpers. So you're like bumping as you're learning down the pathway. And it's just really neat to be invited into your network. Thank you for your time. I'm honored to be here. And like, now we're dialed in on our frequency, and let's bring everybody up.
That's it. It's done. I'm actually going to be in Florida in May, so I'd love to meet up.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wonderful.
You're welcome here in our office, in our home, and we'll offline connect.
I'll definitely take the invite. Thank you so much, Chris. It was a delight.
My pleasure.
Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.